always stare at like the corner of the room, cooing and laughing and holding his arms up as if someone were ready to pick him up. But he was like having these night terrors, I would say, and he would wake up and he'd be like, there's people in robes in the corner of my room chanting. The gentleman that owned the house prior to when my son's grandmother bought it, that room that he was staying in was actually the room where the gentleman committed suicide in the closet by hanging himself.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We've got an epic show ahead, but just remember, if any of you have experiences you'd like to share, I'd love to hear from you. You can either email me at paranormalportalradio@gmail.com or head over to paranormalportal.net. Scroll down and find the button that says Interview Me, and that'll allow you to look at a calendar of possible times and dates and find a date that works for you. Love to hear your stories, so definitely get in touch with me. We got a phenomenal show lined up for you guys today. We are welcoming Andrea to the show, and she's from the Illinois area and has some incredible stories of her child having many ghostly and psychic experiences. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Welcome to the show, Andrea. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine. So I guess probably the best place to start is, where did this all begin? How did this all start?
Okay, so I had my child, my son. I had him in 2010, and so around, like, everything obviously was normal when he was like a newborn and a little, like, maybe 3 months old. But then as he started getting like in the age where they like do tummy time, or they start laying on their back and looking at the ceiling and just cooing and stuff, we would be in his room, and he would always stare at like the corner of the room up on the ceiling and like be just cooing and laughing and holding his arms up as if someone were to be ready to pick him up. And at that time, my mother was around, so she would always be like, oh, it's probably like the loved one that passed away, so-and-so, like a family member or something like that. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. But then when I would bring him, since I was a younger mom at that point, I had, friendships and stuff and places to go. So of course, he would tag along with me, and it would happen at a lot of my friends' houses too, where he would just be staring at like the corners of the ceilings and just, like staring. It wasn't like one of those things where they're looking around the room. No, he would be like dead set on like one of the corners of the rooms and just staring at the ceiling and doing his little babbles and putting his arms up and stuff. And I'd always wonder, I'd be like, well, that's crazy. Like it's just different. Right. It wasn't, I guess, in my mind, I was thinking, yeah, that's not, I don't know about that. And then as time went on and he got a little bit older, it was kind of the same thing. He would be, even when, like, I think it was maybe around, I want to say like 1, because we had moved in. I had actually got my own apartment with him. And we had moved in there, and I got his room all ready for him and everything. So I was excited about that. But yeah, so when I would put him to sleep at night at our new apartment, and it was just him and I would hear him just babbling in his room, laughing as if someone was like making him laugh. And I would go in there and check on him, and he'd just be sitting there, and I would be like, well, why are you like laughing? There's no one in here to be laughing at. So it was just different. I was kind of creeped out, not gonna lie, because it was just him and I. So I was kind of like, ooh, this is different. Like, it's just me and him, and we're in this apartment together. And now I have him like basically like just laughing at something or talking to someone, and I'm like, I don't know.
Wow.
And then one night he was actually at my mom's house. And at that point, my apartment, how it worked was his room was like off of the kitchen or the dining room area where the table and the chairs were. And I had one of my girlfriends over, and we were just having dinner, and his room was completely dark, like the lights were shut off because he wasn't there, and his door was open, and we were literally just sitting at the table. I mean, just talking, eating our food, and all of a sudden, all of his toys started going off, like the lights, the sounds, the music, everything. And we looked at each other, and we both like were like, "What the heck just is like happening right now? Is this
Right.
real? Like this is crazy." And we booked it out of my apartment. Like there was no like, what should we do? No, we didn't even. We looked at each other and we were like, "We're out. Like this is enough."
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
and so I ended up spending the night at her house that night because I was like, there's no way I'm going back into my apartment when that just happened by myself, first of all. So I
Right.
was like, no, I'm not doing that. Um, and then in the morning, my mom brought him back home to me, and I ended up going back home because I'm like, it's light out, it's gonna be fine, it's not nighttime anymore. Like, hopefully everything's calmed down. And when I told my mom about the situation, she was like, well, I feel like your son is very special. Like he's
Yeah.
got energy around him that's really good. That's what she kept telling me, and I was like, oh, okay, like that's fine. But I was like, what? That doesn't really explain why all those toys went off and all the music started playing and it was just so scary.
Right. That's
It truly was
a
the
real energetic
beginning.
thing too. I mean, for all of that stuff to go off at the same time. I understand a toy, but if everything goes off, that's
I mean,
incredible.
everything. Yeah, it was nuts. I mean, he had so many toys because he was an only child at that point. So
Hmm.
people bought him so many like electronic toys that lit up or made sounds and everything. So I mean, his room was filled to the brim with them. And I mean, literally, even his mobile was going off. So I was like, okay,
Wow.
yeah, we're gonna leave now.
That's like a Hollywood moment, isn't it? I mean, it's like from a movie.
Exactly. And
Wow.
like I said previous to you before we started this, that I mean, me and my mother were avid horror movie watchers. So when I saw that happened, I was like, yeah, okay, I am not staying. I don't even think I remember locking my door, to be
Right.
honest, because we literally ran out of there so fast.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
Wow. That's a heck of a beginning. And
I
and so was this it didn't seem that this activity was really stressing him out though. So it was just kind of his world, right?
pretty much, yeah. He did not seem like anything was really bothering him until he got a little older,
Hmm.
and it was around, I want to say, like 2.5 to 3 maybe, because he was able to communicate with me,
Hmm.
and so he started talking pretty early. But yeah, I mean, maybe about two, like I said, 2.5, 3 years old. It was nighttime, and I remember this because it scared me half to death. But we were driving home from my mom's house after visiting her all day, and all of a sudden he's just like in the back of the seat laughing. And I'm like, what are you laughing at, little guy? Like, what are you doing back there? And he goes, oh, I'm just playing. I'm playing with my friend. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I was like, well, who's your friend? And he was like, oh, his name is Boots. And I was like, okay. So I thought maybe, like at that time there was Dora the Explorer, Boots. I was like, okay, whatever. Maybe that's what it was. But then he started like crying hysterically back there. And I was like, well, what's going on now? Like, why are you crying? He's like, well, there's a boy in the sky. Like, he said in the sky, but I figured, well, I don't know what he's talking about. But he was like, there's a boy in the sky with no eyes, and he's just staring at me, and I'm scared. And I was
Oh
like, okay,
no.
that creeped me out.
Yeah. Good
So
God.
I was like, all right. And mind you, I'm driving in the dark, and I don't even want to look in the rearview mirror. So I'm like, okay, whatever. At this point, I'm like, oh, you're gonna be fine. There's no boy in the sky. You're okay. And then he starts crying even more. And he's like, Mom. And I'm like, what? He's like, the boy's next to me and he's got no eyes and no mouth and he's just staring at me and I just want him to go away. Can you get him away?
Oh
And I was
no.
like, all right. Like, literally, I did not know what to do at that point because I'm like, I don't, like I said, I didn't even want to look in the rearview mirror because I'm like, what if I see something or I like freak out or something
Sure.
happens? Um, but then I did end up saying like, all right, Boots, go away. Just trying to, you know, I don't know, just help him. And my son was very distraught. Let's just put it that way. He was not okay the rest of the ride home.
Mm.
Either was I, to be honest, because I was just taken back by everything. I'm like, what? I just thought in my head, like, what 2.5-year-old or 3-year-old would say they see that?
Right.
Um, and he wasn't exposed to anything that would make him think of those things. So that's why I was like, okay, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Uh, and then we had gotten home that night, and I put him to bed, and um, it was pretty quiet until he started like freaking out. And I went in his room, and I was like, "What's up, little dude? Like, what's going on?" And he was just crying hysterically, telling me that the boy was back, and he was like messing with him, and he didn't like it. So I was like, "All right." It's really hard to like navigate these situations,
Oh
especially
yeah.
not knowing if it's real or if it's not real. You're just kind of in the moment, and you're like, "All right, what do I say? What do I do to fix this situation for my child?" Because it's different. And especially being like a first time mom at that point, I'm like, I don't even know, like, kind of what I'm doing at that point, being like a mom, let alone having to deal with like paranormal stuff with my child.
Oh man. Yeah. I mean, there's no manual for this, right?
Not at all. So,
Wow.
uh, but yeah, so I think I ended up just telling him like, you can sleep with me or I'll sleep with you and everything's gonna be okay. Um, but I mean, Boots stayed around for quite some time. Uh, there was always problems with this boy named Boots. My son would constantly talk about Boots, and that was his name. I don't know where the name came from, but that was definitely the the the, the boy, that little boy that would bother him. That was his name, and he would be around often. And my son seemed very distraught about that situation because he did not like um, the interactions that he was having with this ghost kid. So I was like, okay, I didn't know exactly what to do. It kind of died down. It did. It like Boots went away. It wasn't an issue. Um, because we ended up moving out of that first apartment into a new place, and then I ended up having his sister, and I had gotten into a relationship with his sister's father, so things kind of died down. It was like there was more, I guess, positive energy in the household than, I mean, there was positive energy with me when it was just him and I, but I'm saying
Sure.
like it kind of felt like things kind of shifted.
Sure.
Um, and then there was, like I said, there was another child that was brought into the situation, so it was getting better, and I kind of felt more happy about the everything that was going on. But then he just was all right. So about maybe I want to say 3-4 months after his sister was born, the new baby, um, my son had his own room. His sister slept with me in my bedroom at that time because it was a 2-bedroom apartment, so we kind of just had to make things work how it went. Um, and so, I mean, the biggest thing we were, like I said, Boots had gone away at that point, but then we started having issues where he would be sleeping, and then, I mean, out of the blue, he'd wake up screaming, and he was maybe, say like 4, yeah, 4, 3 or 4 at that time. And I would go in there and he would be like, there's eyes watching me. There's so many eyes everywhere looking at me. And I'm like, okay, well, and I thought maybe stuffed animals because there was a lot of stuffies in his room. So I thought, okay, let's get rid of these stuffed animals then, and there's going to be no eyes in your room. And it just continued. There was always like, oh no, I have a bunch of eyes in my room and they're just staring at me. And I didn't know at that point what to do. It was literally it was making us, me and my boyfriend at the time, it was making us like where we were having like sleepless nights or lack of sleep, because it would be happening so often that my son was waking up, and it was like we couldn't console him. There was nothing that we tried so many different things, and then it ended up where like I would have to be like, okay, come sleep with us. Like you gotta get sleep. I need sleep. He needs sleep because we both work. It was kind of just like cutting into our daily life, and then my son would be super tired in the morning because he wasn't getting the proper amount of sleep, because everything was just so chaotic with this whole eyes, the constant eyes staring at him. So we had to deal with that for probably about like quite a bit, quite a bit of, I want to say maybe like at least 2-3 months. I mean, it went on for a while, and it was really, really concerning, because we were thinking like, okay, at that point, his room was there. It was really weird how the apartment was set up, but his bedroom had a sliding glass door to go to the patio type of thing. But he had blinds and curtains. So I thought, is there possibly someone like looking in his window? But then I was like, that couldn't be the case, because we keep the blinds and the curtain shut. There's no way that they would be open for someone to be staring in, and maybe those be the eyes. I mean, we literally like debunked basically everything that it could possibly have been, and we couldn't figure it out. So at that point, 3 months passed. Everything's kind of slightly better. He hadn't had any like weird different experiences for quite some time. I ended up having another child. So he had a brother. At that point, I had 3 children. And then I ended up leaving my boyfriend at the time, or fiance, whatever. I left him, and we ended up moving into where we currently live. So there was, like I said, there was a couple of moves, and things kind of were a little crazy in each location. But then he was older. I can't remember. I can't put my like finger on how old he was, because it's kind of all a little bit of a blur, because it happened quite some time ago.
Mm-hmm.
But he was definitely older. He shared, when we moved into the new location that we currently live in, he shared a room with his brother, and my daughter had her own room, and then I had my bedroom. So it was kind of nice. Everybody had their space. But then it was just weird, because he would be like sleeping, and I kept hearing like weird noises coming from the boys' room, and I'd be like, I don't understand. I don't know what those are. And then it would get louder, and I would be wondering, okay, so what are those noises? I would go into the room and try and check on what the noises were, but as soon as I got to the threshold of the doorway to the boys' room, the noises would stop. And I was like, all right, this is weird. I don't know. They're sleeping. They're not waking up. I don't know. Maybe it's our neighbors. At that point, I was like, I don't know what's going on. But then it started to affect my oldest son's sleeping again, because then he started waking up screaming and crying. And mind you, he's older at this point, so not one that's going to be crying and screaming like a baby would,
Right.
So he's older.
Sure.
But he was like having these like night terrors, I would say. And he would wake up, and he'd be like, there's people in robes in the corner of my room chanting, and I don't know what they're saying. And I'm thinking, okay, that kind of makes sense to me, because that's kind of what I heard coming from his room, like in the beginning, when I would hear these weird, quote unquote weird noises. So that went on for quite some time. And my younger son was never affected by anything. It was just my oldest son that was hearing these things, seeing these things, waking up and freaking out. And that's when I decided, okay, I don't like this because we just moved into this place. Like, this is supposed to be our sanctuary. There should be no like negative energy, negative stuff. And especially when he told me like these people were in robes and they're chanting and
Oh, yeah.
we can't understand what they're saying. So I'm like, okay, this is not good, because at this moment it's just me and my children. So I'm like, I don't like this. It made me feel super uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not gonna lie, I was scared out of my mind at that point. Um, and there was also another incident that happened that involved my oldest and my daughter, in her room, actually, because he ended up going into her bedroom without me knowing, to sleep with her because he wanted to be next to someone. And then I'm talking at that time to now my husband on the phone, and I was talking to him. I'm out on the balcony. I'm just chit chatting because I'm like, all the kids are sleeping. I can talk. Nobody's going to bother me, whatever.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I'm on the phone, and my husband now could hear this through the phone. The both, my daughter and my oldest son, start running down the hallway screaming bloody murder.
Oh,
Like
my
there
God.
was, like someone must have been killed or something. I was just like, oh my gosh, what's going on? So I hang up the phone immediately, and I'm like, what's happening? Why are you guys screaming bloody murder? Like, what's going on? And they can't even like catch their breath to talk. It's like one of those cries that's so hard that it's like you can't even talk through it. Finally, I calmed them down, and um, my son was like, okay, so he goes, we were sleeping, and then we both had like the same nightmare, and my sister woke up and told me about it, and then I told her about mine, and then we both scared each other to the point where we were screaming because we were in a dark room and we thought we saw something
In the room or in the
in the
dream? Wow.
and my oldest son explained it to look like it had long fingernails, and it was all black. It was like an all black figure with long fingernails, and it was like coming towards them, but also on top of the ceiling.
Oh, no.
And I was like,
Jeez.
all right. That point, I told the two older children, because my youngest one was still sleeping. He slept through all this. So I was like, okay, that's kind of nice. But the older two were really scared. So I was like, okay, you guys can either sleep with the lights on. You could definitely sleep together, stay together, or you could come in my bed and just sleep with me. They were like, no, Mom, we want to definitely sleep with you. So I'm like, all right, cool. So we did that. Then the following day, I ended up um, talking to my mom a little bit about the situation, or excuse me, no, it wasn't my mom, it was my grandmother, because at that point, I'm trying to think, because my mom passed away in 2016, and if I was, yeah, it was my grandmother. She's also very, like, I guess you would say spiritual too. She had mentioned to me, like, okay, maybe you need to bring in someone to, like, bless the household or do something that, like yourself, that might even help with like getting negative energy out of the house, because I was explaining everything that was happening, and it was just kind of, it freaked her out, it freaked me out, and it was just a constant thing. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna cleanse my house myself. So I did the Palo Santos, I believe, the
Sure.
wood, and I
Yep.
just went around, and the kids weren't in the house at that time; they were with their fathers. So I was like, all right, let's just do this. I'm gonna get rid of all this negative energy in the house, and everything's gonna be fine. Um, so that kind of helped for a little bit, but then the rogue people kept coming back, according to my oldest son. They
Yikes.
kept every night, just kept at it. And there were nights that I could hear the noises, but there were nights that I didn't hear the noises. And he did mention like they were still in his room. And then he would say he could hear a bunch of people talking nonstop, constantly when he was trying to sleep. They would bother him, waking him up, talking. Um, he never really could tell me like exactly what they were talking about,
Sure.
but it was just constant chatter. So I was like, all right, I don't know. But then shortly, like it was kind of, I want to say maybe like, was it a year, a full year, or maybe 6 months after my mother had passed away. It was really hard on my oldest son because he was the closest to her. He kind of understood what had happened. Um, because of the fact that that was his grandma. He loved her so much. And of course, my other kids did too, but they were still little when
Sure.
that happened. So it kind of didn't hit them too hard because they didn't quite gather what had happened. In all honesty, it hit me and my oldest son the hardest, obviously, because my
Mm,
mother was my best friend. And my son was just always with her, always around her, because that was our first grandson. And honestly, she helped me raise him in a sense because I was I was 19 when I had him, so I was younger, um,
yeah.
and I had to like grow with him. So when she did pass away, it was really hard on both of us. But he was um, he was very like everything seemed to turn around. I want to say like about 6 months after her passing, and then he started talking about how he felt her around him, and that she would come and sit on his bed every night and watch him fall asleep. And he
Oh,
would explain to me that she looked beautiful and she was like an angel, and just she had this glowing presence to her. She was just very calming to him. And I was like, okay, that's wonderful. Because
yeah.
in the actual life, my mother was very, very sick lady.
Oh, I'm sorry.
She, oh, I mean, it's life.
Yeah.
What are we gonna do? But she was a very, very sick person. She could hardly walk. She could hardly do a lot of things. So when my son told me, he saw her in such a happy state at that point, I was very, like, it made me feel good inside because I was like, all right, cool. Like,
Yeah.
she's at peace. That's what I thought in my head. Maybe
Right.
she's coming to my son because that was her baby. So maybe she's just coming to say like, "Hey, I'm with you. I'm protecting you from whatever was bothering you through your whole life so far." And then it was crazy because as time went on and he got a little older, he would tell me things like, Mom, I see her behind you all the time. She's with you. She walks behind you.
Oh, that's
He would
cool.
say things like, um, she tells me she's proud of you. You're doing a fantastic job. And I would be almost in tears because I was like, man, I really needed to hear that. And here comes my oldest son telling me, like, this is what grandma's telling me.
Right.
So it was very comforting. And I just thought of something. This is a crazy story. This was before my mom passed away, too.
Okay.
Um, my oldest son, it involves him as well, of course. Um, he was spending the night at his dad's house. Okay. His dad's house was also so basically his grandmother's house. Let's just put it that way, because his dad lived with his mom at the time. So he was spending the night at his grandma's house, his other grandmother. And his room that they made for him at that house um, was actually a room where the gentleman prior to owning the house, or excuse me, I can't say it right. I'm sorry. The gentleman that owned the house prior to when my son's grandmother bought it, that room that he was staying in was actually the room where the gentleman committed suicide in the closet by hanging himself.
Oh no.
Yes. So, and of course, my son did not know a darn thing about that, because who would tell a young child, like, oh, yeah, by the way, your room that you're sleeping in is the one where, a gentleman took his life. Nobody's
Yeah.
going to tell a child that. So
Right.
he was sleeping. And then and of course, he must have woken up, something happened. But when he got back home, he did end up telling me that every time he spends the night and he sleeps in that room, he would wake up and he would see a man hanging in the closet. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so weird. Like,
Yeah.
it blew me away because I'm like, he doesn't know that.
Right.
So how would he know that someone was hanging in the closet? Like, that just, it freaked me out. And I felt bad for him too, because I was just, taken back by it, because I was like, I don't even, like,
Right.
he ended up not spending the night there anymore because it scared him so bad. So
How old was he about at this time?
when he saw the man
Yeah.
hanging in the closet, he had to have been like 5.
Oh my
I'd say
God.
5 years old. And it scared him half to death. So he did not
Wow.
want to sleep there anymore. So it stopped very abruptly. It wasn't like, he just basically said, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not going there to spend the night. I'll go there for the day and hang out with my grandma and stuff. But he's like, I'm not spending the night again. And he even said, like, unless basically my grandma puts me with her or in a different room or somewhere.
Right.
But he's like, I don't like that room.
Yeah.
And even to this day, when he does, very rarely when he does go to that house, he does not like that room still to this day. He's like, I just don't get good vibes in that room. I hate it. I don't want to sleep in there. I don't even want to go in there.
Wow.
I'm like, all right. I never, like, he remembers certain things. Like, he remembered Boots. He remembered the guys in the robes, or whoever it might have been in the robes. I don't know.
Yeah.
But till this day, he will remember that stuff. But it's not talked about as much as the positive stuff now.
Good.
That's, like, surrounding him.
Yeah.
Which makes me feel better. And I feel like as he matured, of course, he's 13 now, so he's older. As he matured, it seemed to be more, like, just loving and positive energy. And when, like, I had recently lost my father's mother, so my grandmother on my father's side. And he did go to the funeral with us because it was kind of one of those things where it was like we didn't have anybody to kind of, so him and my 4-year-old son went to the funeral with my husband, and then my youngest daughter, who's she was probably about like 1, 2 at the time, I believe. So we all went to the funeral, and my son could see I was very upset because, of course, when someone you love passes, you're going to cry, you're going to be upset. It's not the greatest to, like, cry in front of your children, but at the same time, in the situation, in the moment, it was like, well,
yeah, of course.
What are you going to do?
Right.
But he did see me emotional, and he was like, he just came to me. He put his hand on my shoulder, and he's like, Mom, she's in a better place. I feel that she's good. I feel that she's happy. She can move, and she's in heaven, and she's enjoying herself. And he was going on and on about things that I was just like, how would you even know that the lady played cards? Or, like, just because he wasn't close to my grandma on that side, because we hardly saw each other. It was kind of sad, the situation. But, I mean, he wouldn't have known these things that he was telling me. So it was kind of like, wow, all right, cool. Like, you might have some type of, something going on, because he could feel the energy and the positivity and everything that circled around, like my mother's passing, and then now this grandmother's passing. And it was just kind of crazy how all that happened. Right. Now, what the craziest thing is, we have a new neighbor that moved in, pretty recent, and she's a very spiritual lady. Okay.
Oh, okay.
She never the only children that at that point when she moved in that she met was my youngest daughter, the baby, and I believe my 4-year-old, soon to be 5-year-old son. Those are the 2 children that she met for the first time. And then one day she had asked me to help her out with like coming over because someone was going to buy a couch and she didn't want to be alone. So I said, oh, definitely, I'll be over there. I'll bring my youngest daughter, and we'll kind of just wait for this person to pick up the couch, type of thing. And so what ended up happening is, of course, the person kind of scammed her, didn't pick up the couch. But we ended up talking, and I mean, she was amazing. She told me so much stuff that she would have never known about my mother and just my family. And then when she saw a picture of my oldest son, just seeing a picture of him on my phone, she was like, your son's been here in this earth before, right?
Oh, wow.
I was like, what do you mean? Like, I don't understand what you're saying. I was kind of confused and thrown off. She's like, basically, this is not his first rodeo on this planet, like on this earth.
Right.
He's been here before. He has like abilities, is what she said. He's very in tuned with his abilities, basically. And she said he's very special, and she can tell. And I was like, just from a picture.
Oh, yeah.
And she was like, yeah, I feel it. And then she ended up meeting my other children, and she, excuse me, she met my oldest son,
Uh-huh.
and she just saw him, and just one look at him, she was just like, everything that I told you before. She's like, yeah, it's definitely. She's like, just
Aw.
looking at him, he's got like just an aura around him that's just fantastic. So I was like, all right, cool. And so yeah, that's basically. I mean, it was craziness when it began, but in the end, it kind of turned into more of like just a good feeling. So
Right.
we now all feel very safe. I feel like our house now has very good energy. There's no negativity. It feels very safe and comfortable,
Mhm.
rather than before where I was scared out of my mind every night because I was like, what's
Aw.
going to happen? Like, what's going to happen next? Is something going to move? Is there going to be noises I'm going to hear, or is crazy paranormal activity going to happen? And I just don't know what to do at that point. But now it's better. So I feel very relieved about all that.
It's really crazy. Certainly, it's I would agree that it seems that your child is very, very tuned in naturally, and some people are just born that way. They're just. I think that it's I hate the term gifted because it just it seems to imply that some people are special and some people aren't. But I think we all have these abilities, but just some people are fortunate enough to be born with them just on. And I think that it's real common that those children that are burning so brightly just serve as beacons to, because I think we're swimming in a world of spirits, and they probably want to talk or hear tell their story, kind of like the movie The Sixth Sense, and that kept flashing in my mind as I was talking to you. It's like, wow, you guys are like the Sixth Sense for real. And
Exactly. That I never thought of it that way, but yeah, I mean, it's wild. And I just thought of something else too, which was crazy. Me and my husband, our youngest daughter, we had a day free where we just, it was just me, him, and her, and we went to an oddities show because we wanted to do something fun because we're kind of like spooky people, I guess. Our house kind of looks like a tattoo shop where it's just like there's art everywhere and it's all
nice.
different, like skulls, and we have just collections of globes that have like Halloweens. It's just crazy. But so we went to an oddity show, and there was a psychic there, and she stopped us with our daughter, and she said the same thing about our daughter. She said, "Do you know that your daughter has been here before?" And we
Mm.
were just thrown away by that because we were like, "Wait a second," like, because it was just wild. And then
Yeah.
she explained about how our daughter doesn't take any like yes, basically, because she's been here and she knows what she's doing, and she's just a very like good person. She has good energy around her. I mean, the psychic went on and on about our daughter, and me and my husband were like, well, do we believe it? Is it like hogwash? Is the psychic real? Like, we didn't
Yeah.
really know, but we ended up talking to my husband's sister, and she's got stories for days. She's very like, she sees things coming
Oh,
before they even happen. And my husband's
premonitions.
mother's the same way, and his grandmother, excuse me, his grandmother was the same way as well.
Mm.
Um, so she was actually like, no, I can definitely see that. And that seems very true for, your daughter, that she is like, she's so smart for her age. And she's just like how my oldest was,
Mm.
extremely above average in everything he did growing up and everything. It was kind of like I was blown away. So
Yeah.
my oldest and my youngest are very similar in that way, just very ahead of the game and like old souls,
Yep.
basically. Like they know what they're doing and they're so smart, and just the way they talk and do everything. It's like, geez, like you guys are like mini adults.
Yeah.
Like it's just crazy. There's, there's just
Yeah.
it's just crazy. But I mean, Yeah, I'm happy with everything the way it is now. I'm just praying that it stays that way because
Mm-hmm.
we don't need any bad juju or energy in our house because it's just,
Yeah. No,
yeah, we
I,
just don't.
I've really got to compliment you though, because, um, I mean, a lot of people don't know this. I'm currently not in that position anymore, but I know being a single parent is double tough because I've been there and I've done that, and it's hard. It's hard just to cope with life, but then you had all this other stuff on your plate. And what I really, not only for being a single mother for a great period of time there, handling all of that, but also for the fact that when your child came to you, you didn't do the traditional parental thing like, oh, it's just a dream, go back to bed. Oh, you had a nightmare, it's fine, just go back to your room. And so many times I think children do experience very real phenomena, and then the one safe place they have is the parents, like, help me, I don't know what I'm dealing with here. And then to be met with, go back to your bed, it's just your imagination, or you just had a bad dream. And so and I don't think they do it to be hurtful or anything. They're just, trying to assuage the fears of their child, but they end up putting them back in the very situation they're terrified of. But in the way that you're sharing your stories, you were very sympathetic and caring about it, and that I think is so powerful in helping him, because he knew that you were always going to be his safe spot, his protector. And even though, when you're confronted with this stuff, nobody really knows for sure how to handle it, but you were always right there, and were very compassionate towards that. So nice job.
Thank you. Yes, anybody that knows me knows that my children are my world. They always have been. My first son, he we were, like I said, we grew up together. We experienced a lot of things as a unit, just him and I. Um, so the love I have for my children is endless,
Mm.
and whatever they come to me with, I accept with open arms, whether it is the ghost stuff or the paranormal stuff or just regular daily life. I try to look at it as like, what would I have wanted as a child
Right.
for my mom to do if I was in that situation? I always look at it that way. And I know my mom was a very um, caring, amazing lady. She fought for me for multiple things in my life. I mean, she was just always there. And when I was younger, I did have, like I had mentioned to you prior to this, I did have experiences myself that kind of scared me. And she was always there for me. She never shut the ideas down. She never made me go back to my room. It was more like, I'm going to comfort you and we're going to get through this.
Right.
So that's kind of where I got that mentality, I guess you would say, for my children now. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I was going to ask you if there was activity at the dad's house too for your son, but you've already answered that. But was that the only incident while he was spending time there, or he didn't really go there that much anyway, or what was the
It
situation?
was very rare that he would go there, but
Okay,
yeah, I mean that stuff did happen. It seemed like as if the activity followed him wherever he went.
sure,
It
yeah,
wasn't just like specifically in my house. It did happen at his dad slash grandma's house.
okay,
I mean, it would happen like I said when he was younger, at like my friends' houses.
mm,
It kind of like followed him wherever he went, and
sure,
I feel like it still follows him to this day, but in a sense, it's better energy than anything. It's
yeah,
not negative. It's like more he feels like the angels. He talks about my
hmm,
mom often, about all the stuff she's doing. He
hmm,
did have a dream about her after she passed away. And I mean, this dream blew me and my grandmother, my mom's mom, away. It was the most beautiful thing ever. He said he saw her in heaven flying and dancing to her favorite song, and she did not hurt anymore, she told him. And she was not in any pain. She was safe. She was home where she was supposed to be. I mean,
oh,
he went on, and he said that in his dream, he was able to dance with her, and he loved it, and he just felt so close to her, and it was just a beautiful dream. And I can't specifically remember everything he had said about the dream, but I know
sure,
those were like the key things. And
hmm,
me and my grandmother, which would be my mom's mother, I mean, we were almost in tears because it was just amazing the things he was mentioning. It was like, whoa, it blew our minds. So I know, like, I know my mom did come to me after she passed away in my dreams. but definitely came to him too. So.
Aw. Yeah, I've experienced that as well. And those incredibly, and they're beyond lucid. They're just realer than real, realer than me sitting here talking to you, where I had an experience where my dad came through, and it was just a beautiful healing moment. Now, the skeptics might say, well, look, that's just your brain trying to cope with these things, because there was a lot of things left unsaid between my father and I, and he passed when I was, yeah, and he passed when I was so far away. And I did go home and visit him once before he actually passed, but there was still so much water under the bridge. And it was kind of crushing to know that was the finality of the experience. But then he came to me in a dream, and we both shared things and embraced. And it was this beautiful moment. I mean, I could smell him. I could feel him. And while he didn't talk, I don't ever think I heard his voice. I did in my head. Like, I can't remember him actually saying words in the dream, but I knew we were having a dialogue, and it was very incredibly healing and very cathartic in that manner, because, I mean, how do you handle that? And I think it happens to us more than we realize, that they're with us, and coming to us in dreams is probably the easiest barrier for them to cross, because we're already in that relaxed, open state. So for them to come through is much easier. But I've had it for several relatives that have passed, and it's been amazing every time. And I really firmly believe that those are very real experiences.
I agree with you on that. I really do, because literally the day that my mom passed away, that night when I went to bed, I was devastated, of course, crying my eyes out. It was extremely hard to get to sleep, but I had the most vivid, realistic dream with her in it, and she was like talking to me, telling me she's okay, it's gonna be okay, and that she loved me, but she's got to go now. And it was just so real. It blew me away, and I woke up actually crying.
Me too.
Because it was like one of those things where it was like, oh my gosh, that was so real.
Right.
Like, I felt like that we were in real life, and we were really having that conversation, and she was really in front of me. It was just, I've never experienced anything like that ever again, but that was really like amazing to me. It was just wild.
Right.
I don't know how to explain it other than that.
No, I completely understand, having been through it myself, but yeah, I think oftentimes we dismiss dreams because it's just, we're told it's just us processing stuff subconsciously, but not those dreams. Those are so different and very powerful. But I do agree with you. I think that your mom probably has become his protector and his barrier and his shield, and is probably working really hard to keep him away. But you had mentioned that you think things followed him. I don't know if they always followed him, or as much as he's such a bright light that they would find him no matter where. And, and that's powerful. But I'm so glad that he sounds like he's very well adjusted, and he's got incredible support and love on both sides of the veil, and that he's doing well. That's great news. But what a journey for that guy, huh?
I know.
Wow. I just think of a 5-year-old. Yeah, a 5-year-old stuck with a vision of somebody hanging themselves. I mean, what a horrible thing to have to carry with you. And I don't know why it could be just that, the presence is still there, but he just picked up on that imprint, or it was displayed for him. I don't know which, but if it was displayed, what a crappy thing to do to a little kid,
I know. Part of me wonders if maybe he was just so sensitive to like the spiritual world that maybe he just saw like a reenactment of like something, like he sees like reels. How do I, like, like I'm trying to say, like maybe he's seeing these things as like they were they're happening again, and he's seeing how it actually happened.
Sure.
I don't know. Like I said, I can't explain the little boy with no eyes and no mouth. I can't explain the robe guys that were chanting. I can't explain. Well, I can kind of understand the hanging man.
Yeah.
Because I know that actually did happen.
Yeah.
But everything else, it was just kind of like, whoa, like I couldn't explain it. So part of me was kind of wondering, like, maybe he is a sensitive, like he can see these things, and maybe they were just coming to him to give him a message or try and pass on a message or something. But maybe he was just so young that he couldn't really process anything. So it really truly scared him.
Yeah. And rightfully so. I think adults likewise wouldn't be wanting to sleep in that room.
No.
I know I wouldn't, for what it's worth.
I would go there and I would have to like spend time with him in that room. It just was so off and creepy. I was like, I don't even want to be in here myself.
That's amazing. Well, Andrea, you've been awesome, and thank you so much for taking time to come and share your experiences and your son's experiences. It's been an absolutely wonderful conversation. I really appreciate it.
Of course, I appreciate you for having me. This was amazing.
Oh, thank you so much. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap it up for us today. So hope you guys enjoyed the show, and thank you again so much for all your love and support. And remember, if you want to follow the Paranormal Portal, probably the easiest way is to head over to paranormalportal.net. And that's the homepage for the Paranormal Portal. And you'll find links to all of our different social media and sites and information about the shows, including our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/paranormalportal. Or just look for Paranormal Portal on Google or whatever search engine, and you'll find links to our social media such as Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. So we're kind of all over the place, and we're spreading as well as we can. But anyway, thank you so much for the love and support. Y'all take care, and remember, we love y'all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other, help each other out, find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can. Until next time.